Hello, the Pioneer viewers. As the Pioneer, we continue to bring you the Russian-Ukrainian war with a map. According to the latest reports, the counteroffensive launched by the Ukrainian army continues in 4 parts of the front line. Ukrainian troops who continue their furious attacks against the Russian army at many points caused the Russian army to suffer heavy losses. There are also new developments regarding the Russian army's Avdiivka offensive. The Russian army is about to face a major disaster. As you know, we mentioned in our previous reports most of the Russian armored vehicles destroyed on the Donetsk front line and were destroyed during the operations of the Ukrainian troops. Here, the destruction activities of the Ukrainian army against Russian armored vehicles continue. Although the Russian army is making an intense effort to hide these facts, our sources in the region clearly shows us the fact. So what is the latest situation on the front line? Let's analyze the developments together. Do not forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so as not to miss the daily map reports and the agenda reports prepared by the Pioneer team. You can also support me and my team by commenting on our videos and using the super thanks button below the videos. Let's start if you're ready, the Pioneer reports. Let's start with the Zaporizhia front line. Yes. We'll start with the Zaporizhia front line. Let's look at the Rabotny section of the Zaporizhia front line on the map. As you know, the Ukrainian army has been trying to enter the Kapani region for a long time. According to the latest reports, Ukrainian troops have launched an offensive after an intense artillery attacks in the area. However, Ukrainian troops could not fully dominate the village. According to the local sources, clashes between Ukrainian and Russian troops continue in outskirts of the Kapani and the north and the northwest. In Novoprokopivka, similar actions are being carried out by the Russian army. However, actions of the Russian troops in the region are much weaker than the actions of the Ukrainian armed forces. Ukrainian troops cannot be driven out of the positions they seized around Novoprokopivka. The attacks of the Russian troops only result in the loss of Russian soldiers' lives. When we look in the Verbov region, we see that Russian troops are facing great pressure. Artillery units of the Ukrainian armed forces are heavily hitting Russian positions in the region. As you know, Ukrainian troops are quite close to Verbov here. Ukrainian armored firepower inside the Dragon's Teeth defense line is hitting the Russian positions intensively. However, Russian positions are still resisting. Let's continue with the artillery activity in the area. According to the latest reports, Russian artillery units hit Ukrainian positions in Novodarniivka, Novodanilovka, Rabotny, Malaya Tokmakcha, Goliapol, Malyinovka, and Poltavka. In turn, artillery units of Ukrainian armed forces hit Russian positions in Nestoryanka, Rovny, Salatka Balka, Ichenko, Icheratovatom, Novopokrovka, Novodaryovka, Dorzhenyanka, and Merpovpol and Novozotlovpol. Let's look at the Wuhldar sector of the Zaporizhia front line. As you may recall, we have mentioned several times that this area has been quiet in recent days. Ukrainian troops have resumed offensive operations in the area. According to the latest reports, the artillery attacks and the offensive of the Ukrainian artillery units in the direction of Priyodny has resumed. After the Ukrainian artillery attacks, which continued quite violently, Ukrainian infantry also attacked. However, there was no exchange of territory except for limited areas. Apart from these developments, traditional artillery attacks continue in this region. According to the latest reports, Russian artillery units hit Ukrainian positions in Olgivsky, Novodarivka, Rivnopol, Stromoyorsk, and Makarivka, Obeladgdotny, Yorkhain, Pchestivka, Vuhildarna, and Vodetny. In turn, Ukrainian artillery hit Russian positions in Stepny, Polyetna, Zavidnebizhania, Stervolinka, Novodonetsk, Novomyrosk, Pavlovka, and Nikolovsky. Let's turn to the Donetsk front. We mentioned this at the beginning of our report. There has been an offensive of the Russian troops on the Donetsk front line for some time. One of the main targets of this offensive was Avdiivka. Let us recall the past. Since the beginning of the war, the Donetsk region has seen the most destructions of the Russian armored vehicles and tanks. Since the beginning of the war, the Russian army has lost so many vehicles in the region that the region has become known as a tank graveyard. In recent days, there has been an intensive Russian offensive north of Avdiivka. Russian troops have deployed almost all their armored vehicles to the region. However, despite this, Russian troops cannot make progress. According to reports, 60 Russian armored vehicles and tanks were destroyed in just one day. This is a very serious figure. In addition, Russian sources do not make an official statements about the number of the Russian soldiers destroyed in the region. However, when we look at the reports of local sources, we learn that a huge number of Russian soldiers were destroyed. When we look at the attacks in the region and the defense positions of the Ukrainian army, we see that the Ukrainian defense forces have the advantage. Although the Russian army launched an intense attack, it cannot advance. This is quite important because Russian-backed media organizations have been talking about the big Russian gain on the Donetsk front line for a long time. However, this turned out to be untrue. In addition, according to the Russian sources, the Ukrainian defense line would collapse in the short time. However, it turned out that this was not the case. The Ukrainian defense line does not allow Russian army to advance in the region. We can talk about an intense artillery activity in the region. According to the latest report, Russian artillery shelled the Ukrainian positions in Novomykhailovka, Pededa, Georgiolovka, Krasnohorivka, Alexandropol, Nevelovsky, Karlovka, Laktochkin, and Ocheretin. Ukrainian artillery units targeted Russian positions in Starmelikha, Donetsk, Petsky, Vodiny, Yasinyovka, and Krasnohorivka. We continue with the developments on the Bakhmut front line. According to the latest reports, the Russian army is trying to seize the Ukrainian footholds south of Bakhmut city center. As you know, these footholds are the Klishchivka and Avdiivka region. The attempts of the Russian army to advance in the region are quite high. Despite this, Ukrainian defense forces are performing quite successfully. Thanks to the dominant hills, the Ukrainian army destroys Russian troops before they can approach Klishchivka and Avdiivka. In this way, the Ukrainian army is still in control of the region. It is quite remarkable that the Russian army cannot make gains in the region despite the intense artillery support. It has become clear that the attack's potential of the Russian army has decreased. Let us conclude our report by mentioning the artillery activity in the region. According to the latest information, Russian artillery shelled Ukrainian positions in Diliivka, Belaya Gora, Alexandro Shultin, Ivanivsky, Gornyivka, and Orekhova-Vasiliivka, Razdolovka, Soproni, and Seversky. Ukrainian artillery hit Russian positions in Zorinivka, Kordomivka, Bakhmut city center, Yadgodny, Berkhivka, Krasnopolovka, and Yokolovka. What do you think? Do you think Ukrainian troops will continue their advance in the Zaporizhia front line? Will the losses of the Russian troops on the Donetsk front line increase? How do you assess the Ukrainian defense on the Donetsk front line? Let me know in the comments. I read and care about all your comments.